Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are?
Okay, I can live with that.
You can live with that?
Yeah.
Is it on your feet?
No, it's sort of to my right side, but yeah, it's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Okay, great. To me,
I-
your fan is blowing Adrienne's hair to the side. The way you guys are lined up.
It's very powerful.
I'm gonna hold it up like Pippi Longstocking.
Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia Cahoot, and once again, as always, I am here with my co-host in life and on this show, Glenn Sheridan.
Hello, everybody.
And today we have another super special guest that I am really excited to hang out with today because it is one of our friends from Toronto. And I am so excited because the reason that I reached out to her was thanks to an email that she had sent out maybe a couple of months ago, announcing that she had just completed something that I keep seeing on my Facebook and in my emails and social media and stuff. She had just completed the mindfulness and meditation teacher certification program with Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield. And this layered on top of everything else that this incredible, amazing human being is all about, just really piqued my interest and thought, you know what, we have to have her on the show. So this is someone, like I said, who we know from Toronto. And she has spent 17 years in the wellness field, and she is a chiropractor, a doula, and a lover and teacher of yoga. She was my first yoga teacher. And she is, you know, she is funny, she is smart, she is sassy, she is a lover of life. She has such an incredible spirit about her. And I don't remember exactly how it is that we met. I'm pretty sure it was probably through my bakery when I had it, which was just a couple of streets or a couple of blocks down from her chiropractic clinic that she founded. But she is just a delight. She lights up the room with her smile. She has this amazing laugh. She is so wise. And I am just so excited to find out what it is that is, already bubbling up and making its way forward in this conscious conversation that we're about to have today. But before we start, what I would like to do is she has what I think is a newer website that is all about her. And there is this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful quote from her on there that kind of encapsulates what it is that she thinks about the different modalities of healing that she's involved in and about life in general. So let me just read this for you. I believe that movement is medicine. Anytime we move, we create momentum for healing. I see birth as cellular movement, chiropractic as micro movement, and yoga as macro movement. Inner movement can create the outer movement of your life. And I have goosebumps as I'm reading that right now, which is so neat because we are sitting in a sweltering 35 degrees Celsius Victoria, not even in Victoria, on Vancouver Island, which is about 10 degrees hotter than it normally is at this time of year. But I'm feeling all like goosebumpy and chilly right now because the energy that is flowing in this conversation that is unfolding right now is so powerful and so profound. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to the world Dr. Adrienne McRuvie, doula, chiropractor, friend, yogi, and just all around amazing, brilliant, luminous human being. And Dr. Adrienne, I would like to ask you, as I ask everyone on this show, who do you think you are?
So when you asked me to be on this podcast and I listened to a couple of podcasts, the first thing that came to me, and I'm sticking with it, I am everything and I am nothing. Those are the words that came to me. And then I realized after I was like reading something, and then it is a quote, and I can't remember how it goes exactly, but I must have like it must have sunk into my being at some point, but I think it was something um like love is everything. Like I am, like I can't remember the exact quote and I'm going to totally mess it up, but I was like, I must have hung on to that and my life flows in between those. That's sort of how the quote went. I think it might have been Wayne Dyer. And I think it really just encapsulates a lot of things and really says like, again, it's the beginning, it's the end, it's the all the beautiful stuff in between. So that's sort of what came to me.
You know, it's so neat that you say that because we had a friend of ours on the show many months ago, Donia Oxford, an incredible musician and self-proclaimed metaphysician and just like fantastical human being, incredible spirit. And I misquoted her in a workshop by saying that she said what you just said when she actually had said, I am not any one thing and I am everything. The idea was very, very similar. But I think it's so neat that, like it's just slightly different languaging, but very much the same idea. But what I really love is what you said about the in between, about just sort of like the space in between. And it reminds me of last Saturday when I spent the entire day in a day-long intensive immersive advanced consciousness studies class experience to make up for 3 classes that we had missed during the year. And what we experienced going into the second half of it right after lunch was this healing sound bath that was put on by Phil Jacobs, who is one of the Welcome Home teachers through Welcome Home Toronto, and who also is one of the guest musicians, I think on a monthly basis at Global Truth Center Toronto. And when he was talking about vibrations and people were asking about, sort of the different frequencies that it's best to meditate at or heal at or whatever, the way he talked about it was more like it's not 432 or 538 or like whatever the number is. It's what happens in between those sounds, the vibration and sort of the connectivity and the activity that is going on. That's where the healing occurs. That's where the expansion occurs. That's where, when we're talking about the quantum field, that's in the space is the infinite potentiality. And so I love that you just brought that up. So thank you. And just seeing your smiling face right now, like knowing that we're talking to you is just so awesome.
I was like, it started bringing up like all of my yoga training and just, and the idea of vibration and, it's so funny because thank you for the introduction, by the way, because even just going through all of that and all those lovely things that people say about you in an introduction, you're like, oh, thank you, because some days you're like, just getting through life during COVID has been hard, and to know that you resonate with some people and to hear nice things said about you is lovely. So thank you. And I was also just going to say, like, we had this little chat last night, like through the clinic that I run. We have nights that we meet and they're on Zoom, but we all sort of had a night of inspiration, like what inspires us. Mm-hmm. And we all just sat around talking about all the things that inspire us. And it's so lovely to share all of that stuff in between, right? It's in like I always just say, like, it's in all the small moments that matter, right? It's like sometimes you have these big grandiose things that happen in your life that really anchor. So I know one activity I was been working on this year is like really marking the anchor points in my life. I was born here, I had my children, I went to school, I did this, I did that. But then there's like all these small moments in between that aren't the big anchors and the big pillars, but they're the mindful moments that really start to change the trajectory about how we interconnect.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just so funny. And even through this whole process and doing my training, it's brought up so many like small moments that I don't think I would have remembered. But then you start to remember and start to think about, all these small moments that I can't barely remember what I, ate for lunch yesterday, but I can remember the moments that anchored and imprinted themselves in my cells. Like I was talking in my class about mindful listening, and I was sharing a story about one of my boyfriends, and he's now later trained to be a psychologist, which makes a lot of sense for this, what I'm going to tell you. But I remember walking down the street telling him about something that was really like hurtful to me and really hurting me, and I was having a hard time with. And he like stopped me and he held my shoulders and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "This is really hard." He's like, "Let's just tell me about it." But it was like this moment where someone heard me. You know what I mean? Like people
Mm-hmm.
don't often like hold onto your shoulders, like notice that this is a big conversation, this is a big moment, and that you are needed. Like they're there to facilitate like a process for you to
Mm-hmm.
support that and to be heard and to be uh, cared for in that way. Like I still remember that particular moment out of all the other moments that I can get, because it was like it changed. Like, wow, I feel like I've been seen.
Mm-hmm.
You
You know
know? So I
what that
sorry,
what that sorry th- what that kind of reminds me of is that in that instance, he honored sort of the flow of your consciousness, and that there was a blockage or something in your flow, because when you have fear, you have an experience that gives you anxiety, and you're just stuck in the, like, if it was that was water, it would be those parts of the water where it goes in little eddies and it just stuck there and it doesn't flow out into the river again, right? So I like that idea that, if someone's able to connect in that way and just and be present with a person who's experiencing whatever it is, it does help to reconnect to the greater flow of the universe, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like that's a lot of what I've been experiencing, especially through this course. Like, I mean, it's always an evolution, but this idea of like holding space for another,
Yeah.
like, like, I mean, that's always a good coach and a good therapist, right? Like, I know my best, like, coach people that I've had in my life, they're like, "I can hear in your voice that you're hurt, or you sound really excited about this." And I'm like, "Really? I didn't even hear any tone change, but they did." Right. So it's like, it's being really in tune and having a moment with someone that you can really bounce off with you, like you say, this flow of the universe, however it is, but like an interconnectedness, like connection is one of my bigger, life themes. And I think that, yeah, it's really important.
I'm glad that you used the sort of the phrase, in tune, because as both of you are speaking, I'm thinking back to my training as an integrative nutrition health coach and as a spiritual practitioner, and now onto ministry. And even being in a class, or in a group of any kind, being in a conversation, even with another person, to really, really become aware of, what is it that wants to happen here, and what is it that is evolving and showing up and making its way forward in this agreed upon reality that, two, three, or more people are sharing. And that being part of that conversation or part of that, unfoldment sometimes just means being present, and sometimes just means being present, by companioning, or just sort of being there, if you will, to allow the energy that is this conversation or whatever it is that is happening to unfold. And I think I really didn't get that, until practitioner studies, when there were more and more times where I would just actively listen and realize that even though there was something I might want to add to the conversation, was it really going to enrich the experience for anyone, or was it just me wanting to get in there? And finding myself more and more like, it's okay, and if someone else says it, that's okay, because it needed to be said and the opportunity came up, and that was okay. But the whole in tune part, it just makes me think back to resonance and vibration and frequency, like we experienced in that sound bath healing with Phil last Saturday. And then music, period. Whether it's like a piano string or other strings or tuning forks, or just when you're oming. Like one of my favorite parts of yoga practice with you was the om at the end, when everybody, and this doesn't happen all the time, but everybody would end up kind of coming in unison together. It was, again, with the goosebumps, it was just, talk about space in between being expanded just by that vibration of the om. And I still value my, om teaching from you, because you have this like full om that starts with ah when you do it, and like when you're feeling it at the end, sort of thing. And one of my friends from class, who is actually going to be a guest in a couple of weeks, she's very, very particular when she does an om, and she's like, it's a 3-part process. There's ah, o,
Yeah.
and feeling that in every part of your body, resonating and vibrating, it's extraordinary. So yeah, so that whole sort of like in tune and resonance, and then all of it, of course, being the interconnectivity of this incredible energetic flow that is just making its way through, each and every one of us, everyone and everything. And to be able to, kind of resonate at a certain frequency with someone or someone's, from time to time, can just be this extraordinary, magnificent thing. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And maybe just when you were talking there, it made me to think of first of all that the AUM, every part of that vibration should resonate and start to heal different parts of like the skull and pineal gland. And like when you really do the om at the end, like you can really feel it in your head. So that's the idea of that vibration, that sound does heal. That was that one thought, just to say that. The other thought, or the picture that came up to me, is I've done less teaching of yoga throughout the years, and again, I'm more diving into the mindfulness practice and teaching that. But I have kept this mother and baby, I should say parent and baby yoga class, and I just love like the oming with the babies. It's so funny because I just find it so fascinating that some will freak out, some will try to, if they're old enough, they'll like start to like try to copy you and om, and then some will just be like what is that? Like it's like they caught on to like dropping into that place.
Yeah.
That sound, I always just say it's the sound at which the universe hums, right? I mean, it's, a different sound coming out of your body, but it's that universal sort of sound. And it's just interesting, like how, and I remember, being a new mom, and I would just like, I would om until the children stopped crying. And I would like in my head, I'm winning here. And I would like, not giving up until you stop.
Yeah.
There's a mantra. I'm not giving up until you mantra. So I feel like om has served me very well over the years, and I always use it too in my practice. Is I know when I am in my body and I can om, I always just think about it like tuning a musical instrument. And I know when I'm off and my nervous system is shot, when it does get all the way through, and I can hear the cracking in my voice, and then I'll do some movement practice and I'll om and I'll be like, okay, I'm back. You can hear it. Like a Gregorian monk, rather than like
That was like a chipmunk or something.
So it's also just like functionally this nice sound to, okay, where am I at? Like this real marker of sound. One other thing that came to me, I'm just like, well, I've been listening to these Gabor Mate is having these videos on the wisdom of trauma. and he had an interview with Alanis Morissette, and they were just talking about music, and it was really lovely. Also, because Om to me is the sound and vibration, but they were just talking about like how like not really thinking through to the end how they cut arts and music. You cut arts and music when you do things on Zoom, but yet you keep math. And on our deathbed, we're not going to be doing math equations. We're going to be like connecting with arts and music,
Yeah.
right? They were just like thinking about the longevity of all the in between, right? Like what brings us joy? All of those, it's the vibration that runs through all of those things. And yet we cut off those parts of ourselves for the logic.
Are those Gabor Mate things? Are those like what was the setup for that? Was it like a Zoom thing first, or was it?
So he had a movie that was called The Wisdom of Trauma, and it was a movie that two people had put together, and then a bunch of interviews that
Mhm.
spun off it. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, so I think I purchased them because I'm just really interested in I'm
Right.
interested in trauma and bodies. That's another interest of mine that's sort of come up over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He's a fascinating dude, and man,
He, he's very intense, but he's also got this uh, incredible wisdom vibe going on. Like if you don't know him at all, then you know he's kind of world renowned, but like not everyone knows who he is, obviously.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, once you kind of start listening to him, he's like, oh. But there's stuff in there where I kind of don't want. I'm not ready for it, I'm not interested in it. Like you're saying, you're really into the trauma thing, but like I know the book I read that sort of um, that's where I kind of left off with it was the body keeps the score. I can't remember the author of the book, but that kind of stuff where it just stays in your body, right? And that I was thinking about that the other day because I was listening to the Tara Brach podcast on she did on embodiment, like a two-part thing. I'm just on the first one at the moment, but um, it's like there's a lot of just common sense, just be, like retraining your mind to go back into your body. I guess I don't know how to explain it, but um, with the Gabor Mate stuff, it's a little bit more intensive and intense to me. So I'm not ready to go there. But at the same time, there's all this other stuff going on at the moment in terms of um, you know tr- trauma that stays through generations in people. And obviously, it's going on in Canada at the moment because of the find what's being found in residential schools, in the West Coast here. And like I work with a bunch of Native people, and there's days when I look around like no one kind of showed up. And it's like okay, fine, because obviously they or their families are going through some stuff, and no one's really asking them questions about it. It's just like okay, I get it. Nobody. It's just it's just happening. So the more that people can understand that, and I know eat like I'm from a Western background. I'm from Ireland, so um, most peoples have had their version of trauma that intergenerationally kind of stays in the body, gets passed on to the babies, and if it isn't worked out, cleaned out. And I don't even know how you would say you've done that, right? Except by just feeling wonderful in the present moment and loving and that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's I think it's the kind of thing I can go back to and just explore a bit more when I'm ready, rather than feeling I gotta like study this and cover it kind of thing.
And I feel like the big T trauma is it sounds like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go there because I can't handle it right now. There's even I had a book right here. Another woman that I've been reading. Name's escaping me, but the idea that we all experience trauma, right? And
Right.
trauma could be that our we weren't heard. That could be trauma. And then how it was assimilated into our cells then turns into how we start to see the world and how we interact because that door was closed for us. So and if you sort of even just look at his videos, and it's all of us, like it's whether you want to go there or not, but we all have minor versions of trauma or significant trauma that's really hard to unpack because we use all of these, other devices, drugs, alcohol, or whatever that is, some addiction to cover it up because it's too painful uh, to experience or re-experience.
I I I agree with that. I just think because even being born is traumatic. Obviously, it's like, oh, what is this? I signed on for this, but I've forgotten that I, made this appointment, right? Um, but it's the other side of it though is like the word. There's this current thing of language being watered down and changed, where you can take a word like trauma or you can say PTSD, and people just start casually throwing it around like, oh, I've got PTSD from this, or I trauma from this, from it doesn't serve you well to say that, like let's say for me, the Irish famine is like traumatic to think about for me, and then it just gives me an excuse to kind of get dark and like feel very, brooding and like working through the feelings of like what happened here and why did it happen, the power dynamic, whatever. Like I just think that's the wrong rabbit hole to go down. You it. So what I'm saying, like the word, I don't appreciate right now that the word trauma is or things like that are being just casually flung around rather than just taken for what they truly are, as sort of they're not exceptional, like they're not like you said, everyone's had some form of it, but we also are incredibly resilient and we are able to get through, especially with help of others. And teachings of like even just reading poetry sometimes can like trigger things that assist you in getting through a blockage or a difficult time, right? So that's what I want to encourage people to do
I,
is just like,
I completely agree with you in terms of, I have the same thing around the word anxiety.
mm,
I started noticing about, I would say even 10 years ago, that in clinic, all the intakes had anxiety checked off.
yeah,
And I was like, "Oh, what is happening? Like, why does everyone have anxiety?" And so I think, there's a clinical diagnosis. It really gets in the way of your everyday life. And then, what have been exploring more through this mindfulness practice is we all at times have anxious feelings,
mm-hmm,
right? So we have heart palpitation, we feel like leaving our body, we have a hard time, breathing and catching our breath. Does that mean we have or diagnosed with anxiety? Probably not. I think it's our body's intelligence telling us that there's a situation that you need to listen to. You probably need to stop, create some space for yourself and sit and listen and process rather than going to your next thing to create that next layer of stuff you didn't digest. It's like food. So I think we also in life, we don't digest our experiences like we should. We just go on to the next one and then it's just sitting there like, bad licorice or whatever, like bad food sitting there and not being able to fully digest life as we should.
yeah,
Good.
totally.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. You also sort of brought up, and what I also love about the mindfulness approach is this idea when you said, you know, um, how we should feel when we're not in trauma, like this ideal goal that, like when all of us, if you asked your all parents what they want for their children, that's we want them to be happy, right? And so we set these expectations and goals for ourselves that we should always be happy. And the idea of mindfulness as an approach is that life is hard and that there's like this cauldron of soup and we have happiness and we have anger and we have jealousy and we have joy and we have all of these things in this pot of soup at any given moment. And if we could just sit there and witness them and not pull them in and then have them take us down the rabbit hole. So I think that's part of the challenge, is just, can we sit there, observe them, be with them? um, that's part of life, and that is more sort of the point, instead of going down the rabbit hole and taking your sorrow and your grief and uh, yeah, again, like going down these dark alleys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this makes me think of Adrienne, as you're talking about sort of the two, like the world of consciousness that I'm immersed in and have been for the last 5 years, and the science of mind and spirit teachings by Dr. Ernest Holmes, and the idea of subjective mind, which is part of the triune nature of consciousness or God or spirit or universal energy, universal mind, whatever you want to call it, where it's the seat of all memory, all thoughts, all ideas, all feelings, everything, collective consciousness, like everything that is, was, and ever will be is like there, housed, just like available and waiting. And as we filter sort of our this energetic flow, that we are allowing to just sort of emerge through and as us, as it filters through that, it depends on what it is that we are thinking, what it is that we are believing, whether we are aware of those beliefs consciously or not, as to what that's going to filter and sort of get, stuck on, or like Glenn was talking about, the eddies before, which I don't quite agree with, but like I can see like they can become a block. And then, because of those blocks, because of those eddies, because of those beliefs, how life ends up, showing up in the end. Or if you go quantum and there's this, infinite field of potentiality where everything exists in wave form and according to what we choose, and that nothing is happening to us, we're the ones constantly choosing, and by our choice, which is colored by or qualified by the lens, our worldview, our thoughts, our beliefs, our tendency of thought, then that wave of possibility that we choose immediately becomes our life experience. So from wave to particle, that we're always choosing, and that even though, there are all, and so the good, the bad, the sweet, the sour, everything in between, it's all there for the taking. You get to decide what it is that you're going to latch onto or filter through or bring into the present moment. Now, the thing for me that is really interesting now, and this has really just kind of come up for me in the last few months, because of some of the people that have been in my advanced consciousness studies class, is for me my absolute favorite spiritual principle that just blew my mind wide open when I was in my very first class with Reverend Jonathan Zenz at the Center for Spiritual Living Toronto 5 years ago, was Thomas Troward's principle is not bound by precedent. And we've talked about this before on this show, but principle is who and what we are at our core. It's that universal energy. It is consciousness, spirit, soul, God, whatever you want to call it. It's the allness of being. And underneath everything that is going on, all of our experiences, all of our feelings, all of our emotions, thoughts, beliefs, that essence is who and what we are. And precedent is something that happened. And so principle is not bound by precedent means that there is absolutely nothing that could have ever happened, and happened means it happened in the past, not that it's happening right now, that could ever change who and what you are at your core. But then as we've gone into this quantum realm, there's no time, there's no space, everything is possible right here, right now, everything is happening simultaneously, infinite realities, and you can like leap from one to the other kind of thing, if as you desire. So nothing that could has ever happened, nothing that could ever happen can ever change who you truly are, that infinite potentiality that you are. However, I find it fascinating, especially being in class with people who do work with past lives and fragmented souls and multi, other parallel universe or dimensions, or even alien, or like stuff that is like so has not been on my radar, that I just haven't even been interested enough to kind of go, tell me more. And so now I'm very curious. And even this morning, I listened to a meditation, by one of my favorite YouTube mindfulness and meditation guys, Kenneth Swash, who has a few different streams of mindfulness and meditations, and he does some live stuff too. And I've been listening to more or less the same one, for the last several months, because it just feels amazing and is
Share it
like,
with me.
that's the one.
Yeah.
I will. Um, but this one today, it was just done 3 months ago, and so I tuned into a different one. And this was more of a journey, and it was about 45 minutes long, and there was stuff that he talked about. I don't even know what these things or entities or energies are, but his voice is very soothing. I think that he and his brother do the music, for their stuff, and a lot of it is it just like it's very bassy, resonant. There are ohms that come in there that are just like, mm. And so this story and this journey that I was taken on, that took me into, I can't even remember most of it, but like into another dimension, and to basically, the idea was to like bring fragments of my soul that had been gotten stuck, elsewhere because of some kind of trauma or experience. And the idea was to like reconnect with those fragments and become whole once again. But there were like pillars of different kinds of light, different elements of the land as we understand it. The staircase, there were like these energetic bodies that he identified with words and names and stuff, which for some people maybe, it's they get it, it's par for the course, but it was so new to me. But the experience was just so neat, and I'm like, I want to find out more about this, because it's new. And being immersed in the studies that I'm immersed in, and doing the work that I do with people to shift from identifying with old thoughts, beliefs, and feelings that have been running the show, with worry and overwhelm and anxiety and fear and anger and pain, to realizing those are, and not to trivialize anything, but those are just thoughts. Those are just feelings. Those aren't who and what you are. You are so much more infinitely powerful, creative, and resilient than all of that put together. And so there's nothing that could ever diminish or water down or dilute who and what you are at your core. So to shift from identifying with that to, I am this infinite potentiality, I can do and be anything, regardless of, if I'm feeling happy, sad, angry, fearful, overwhelmed, anxious, whatever. Because like you said, it's all part and parcel of it. And we get to choose, are we going to sort of, sit and allow and be aware, or are we going to like let them take over us? And even then, it's not like, at least I believe, it's not anything outside of us that is taking over us. It's just us choosing to identify with something and focus our attention and energy on something, and then based on that attention, our life shows up the way it does, or we're creating our life the way, we end up experiencing it. But yeah, this whole idea of past lives and past trauma and other dimensions and things that I know like this much about, people who have gone back, to the moment of their birth, and are experiencing it, like it's really becoming more and more fascinating for me.
Work is, I mean, all of the work is fascinating. And I would say, in my earlier years in going through any sort of spiritual enlightening, like I've always been a seeker at heart. And this is why I feel like I've done so many trainings, because I'm just like, I just want to know it all. Like all like avenues. I want to go down all roads. And I did work with someone. I did my Reiki training initially, was the first sort of foray into, just touching, well, not even touching bodies because you're above the body, but but I connected with a woman who was a past life regression therapist, and I worked with her for a bit. So, this is why I think that, sometimes I ask myself a bunch of different questions, like, what is your greatest fear? I'm like, drowning. I'm like, this is why I think I'm afraid of, water at its core. It's because I've drowned in a past life. So I think there's a thing there. Like, I think there's things. And when I've done work with her, I'm like, am I just making stuff up? Like, where did that come from? And she's like, oh, that's inside you. We like did some work and I was like, no, I think I was just making it up. She goes, why would you make it up? And I'm like, I don't know. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're making it up, but it makes sense. Like when you start to kind of dig into some of these places that, it makes sense to me in my life now why certain people are there, or why I attract certain people, or why I'm afraid of certain things from a really deep, dark rooted that I can't even explain, and why there's like almost this cascade of events like around water for me. It's always been like, oh my God, like all these things have happened, like little, I'm going to call them traumatic events. Like I almost, one of my first times that I traveled with my husband, he's like a scuba diving instructor. And I said, we went to Vancouver for the first time for a friend's wedding. And I was like, cool, come and collect. Had my certification. He's like, you want to go diving in the ocean? And I had only gone to Jamaica, like really bright light, like colorful fish. And he takes me on a dive to the ocean, and I'm not comfortable in water. First of all, like fun fish versus a big body of water is a totally different experience. I start to like panic and start to feel like water seeping in through my regulator. I'm like down. Like I start like pulling on him. He can hardly see me because we're in the dark. So there's like flashes of light. And I finally like come to the surface. I'm like coughing up blood. Like we go to the hospital, and my husband's like, this, I think we've been dating for like 3 months, but he's like, I love you, because I think he thought he was going to kill me and have to come. So I was like, so I'm like, water. So all that to say, past lives, all these water things just start following me. But there's like, again, I think there's something to it, and I haven't been there in a really long time. And I know, even through my mindfulness training, we had a mentor group, and one of the gentlemen there, he was also, talked a lot about past lives, and would tell us who he was in his past lives. So I think I don't spend a lot of my time there, but it's an opening, right? It's an opening. I believe in it. I think I was somewhere else before, and that informs where I am now. And you did talk about, like, you were also just talking about like what sort of came up for me too. And again, it might be going down a little bit of a different path, but I think what I've really been loving with the mindfulness work for me is the idea of that listening to the body rather than the cognitive mind, because it can trick us and not always be right. And like you say, our thoughts are not always our thoughts. Sometimes our thoughts are our mother's thoughts. Sometimes our thoughts are something a teacher said to you. Sometimes, like, it's something that somebody said to you in the past that has really stayed with you and then becomes part of your belief. So we know we can't trust our thoughts. And then I, probably about 5 years now, had a concussion, have experienced like multiple small concussions after that. And I also just realized I can't trust my brain all the time. Like it doesn't always work the way I want it to. But I can trust my insides. Like I can trust my heart. I can pay attention to what my body's telling me. So I think there's like this idea of your body, and there's work also to say this, that you have a physiological body response before you actually have a thought. So to actually trust the body before you trust your brain is probably a better idea anyway. So this idea of mindfulness and scanning the body and embodiment, like all of these ideas of that I've been, incorporating. And again, it started in yoga, but like a formal training of mindfulness has really, really entrenched how important and why I feel like I do what I do as a chiropractor. Like it all starts to bring it all full circle. Because to me, if you can't live in your body, like it's really challenging to not have that body, like spirit brain, wonderful connection happening. Like if you can't cut yourself off from that body part.
It's
Sorry, there was one other thing that I was just remembering. I was teaching a class. This one woman, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying, and I'm not going to share her name, but she was sitting there and she was like, we were doing a body scan, and she's like, and I asked for people to share, and I'm laughing because she's like, it's okay. She goes, I'm having like this radiation from my heart down my arm, to my fingers, which I have never noticed before you actually saying. She goes, I'm not having a heart attack, I swear. But it's like, what are these motives? Like, how did you not notice that was not, like happening until you just like sit with yourself and you just do a body scan and you notice that you have this pain in your heart that's radiating down to your arm that you hadn't noticed all day. Like, what is happening? Like, to me, I was like, I don't understand. Because I guess because I work with bodies all day and I'm always asking people, check in. Where's the body at? That's always my question. Where's your body at? Tell me your body story. Like, what does it want to tell me today? And that's what I love saying to children. What is your body saying to you today? What does it want to tell me? Like, the wisdom of the body.
Before Lassia jumps in there, because I know she's got something.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my brother-in-law.
Get
from
in
Dublin.
there.
My brother-in-law from Dublin. He I guess it's an expression there. He asked people, how's the body? That's like, how are you for him? How's the body? I like that.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah. Somebody actually.
It's like, how are you responding to life? Or I don't know how to explain it. It's a good like, it's like a.
I love that. Yeah. It's almost like, well, how are you is supposed to was I think intentionally intended to mean how's your constitution, right? Wasn't that the original of how are you? Like it was meant to say, how's your digestive system going?
Yeah.
So, when you say, how's your body? For me, that goes directly back to consciousness. How's your body of consciousness? And there are several bodies of consciousness, like there's the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, the supramental. And so, all of that sort of together, I mean, how is it? And is it in balance? Is it in tune? But
how would you explain? So if you were asking that to someone as just a check-in, like I think for people, and maybe I just throw that out there back to you, if you were to scan how are you in this moment and use that paradigm, like how are you right now?
Are you asking me, how am I right now? Very much enjoying this conversation, I can tell you that. More aware than before, and
more aware.
It means more conscious, more present, more.
What does that mean? Like, how are you taking that in?
That I'm not thinking about other stuff. I'm focusing on right here, right now, and flipping back and forth, honestly, between answering you, thinking about your question, and then also being aware of how my body is feeling, how my energy level is, clarity of mind. How am I feeling, I guess, sort of emotionally, am I calm? Am I anxious? Do I have any kind of like pit in my stomach or scratchiness in my throat? One of the things that I realized that as we record the podcast is, I do drink almost the entire time so that I can keep my throat lubricated, but I do also have and this is a neat, because it's a speaking and being heard and being seen thing, that I continually am clearing my throat. So I'm muting myself a lot as I'm clearing my throat, so you don't hear throughout the show. But yeah, on all these different levels, just kind of checking, almost like sort of like driving a car. But when you're driving a car, you're doing all these, this mirror check, this mirror, looking in front of you, kind of like what's going on behind you, being aware of everything that's going on, but not really necessarily focusing 100% on any one thing at any given time. But I feel like having the opportunity to be able to focus, to be able to be very present and grounded in this moment right here, right now, and what is making up that moment, in terms of how does my physical body feel? How does my mind feel? How do I feel emotionally? How connected and anchored do I feel in the energetic flow that is the universe, knowing that that's who and what I am, and how, interconnected do I feel with everything going on around me. So there are
I take
times
you through a little
when,
exercise just
what's
right
that?
now. You take you through a little exercise.
Oh yes, sure.
It's really simple, but it's, just sort of encapsulates what we're sort of talking about and what I love. And people, when I teach the class, are like, I use this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
2 and the 1 is a little bit more difficult because it's like smell and taste, and you might not have anything. But just sitting, and I usually say we'll do it slowly, but then whenever you're trying to ground yourself in a space, you could. I use the other word 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, synonymous with expansive awareness. So you're going to anchor yourself in your space, and that could mean, sit bones, sitting upright so your body doesn't feel rigid, but aware. And you're going to pay attention to 5 things that you see, not logical processing, just black car, blue sky, green tree. So 5 things you see, just name them. Don't go down a rabbit hole. 4 things that you feel. So try inside and outside. Outside, sit bones, hands on knees, heartbeat, whatever. 3 things you hear. 2 things you smell. And then you might just want it on the taste, just like do a little swallow. So I love that one because it automatically tunes you in. We take input into our 5 senses. It's one of the major ways our nervous system regulates and takes in information. And some of us can be stronger in one sense than the other. But it has a really lovely way of just like, oh, I'm here and I'm a sensory being. And it has a nice way. There's a part of mindfulness that's external, like we take in external information, and we can create mindfulness from like doing dishes and slowing down our movements. But mindfulness is also listening to our interoceptive communication. Like our stomach has a voice, our throat has a voice, our heart has a voice. So what are they saying to us as well? So that's part of like, it's a really nice, lovely way just to go, okay, I'm here. And I think when you were talking about Lesia, like the, connecting into the universe, often if you are not connected into yourself first, I think for people, when you are trying to even introduce this concept to them to be present, it's really hard to connect to something that's bigger if you haven't yet find the micro part of that within you. Right? Because whatever is out there is here.
Yeah.
Right? So I think finding that place and grounding into the safety and the wholeness within allows people to then go, oh, okay, I can connect to this bigger part, or what I like to say, zoom in and then zoom out. But the universe sounds really big and sometimes really scary
Yeah.
for a lot of people, especially if, you know, after this year, like I'm actually going after this, we've met, and the girls are now 14, and they're, you know, we've met every month since they've been 8. Like COVID's been hard. We tried to do Zoom, but now we're doing, you know, meeting outside. And there's some of the girls that are actually scared to leave their house, right? It's been a really tough year. So, you know, just like, again, like the world can sometimes be really scary after COVID. We were all scared of each other. We were scared of hugging each other. We were scared of like breathing close to each other. So now it's I think finding that safety within first, like close, and then like titrating out to this place that, okay, now I can trust it again.
Mm-hmm.
It actually takes some time for some people.
Yeah, that's a great exercise. It reminds me of when I did a meditation course through Mind Valley with Emily Fletcher, and she goes through the 5 different things, the senses that you just talked about. But it's like, what is the thing that you're aware of most, and then what is the thing that you're aware of least in each one, back and forth. And then it also reminded me of something else, which I'm forgetting right now. But I wanted to ask: is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 always in, you know, like, is it see, feel, hear, smell, taste, or do you sometimes mix it up?
I would say sometimes I'll just do, because the 2 and the 1 are, you know, not as powerful. I
Yeah.
would say usually I'll just do 5, 4, 3, and it honestly, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It's really about grounding into a sensory experience. You could create any variable of that what you want. You could do 3, 3, 3, but I find the seeing, touching, hearing, they're really powerful to just like. And I remember my husband and I did this course. This is years ago before we were married, and it was like it was a Tom Brown. Have you heard of Tom Brown?
No.
All these like books on tracking. Like he's actually like known for tracking, but his
Like in the
workshops
Is that like
wilderness?
in the
field
wilderness.
guides to the wilderness sort of thing, or
Yeah.
okay?
We went to, he had a like a week-long course in upper New York State, and when you track, you are like an animal, right? So basically you go, they're not thinking, they're not going through this frontal cortex process, they're just like expansive awareness. So you're like wide angle vision, like not like computer vision,
Yeah.
wide angle vision. This is why our brains like wide open spaces, because we can go here, we can see all of it. And then and just like again, like he got us to walk so slow, like a step a minute. So you were like you know, if you're tracking, you can't let anyone or any other thing try to get you or like hear you. So you're walking so slow, and you're listening to the bird, because the bird calls, and then that there's like a rustling sound after that. There's like this, you know, like there's a consequence to the bird making the sound. So there's like, you're like, okay, I'm at one with nature. Trying to catch a deer. We didn't catch a deer, but but the idea of tracking is the same sort of thing. It's like when I'm talking with mindfulness a lot, I'm like, pretend you're a dog. Like use that. They're really happy-go-lucky. They're not thinking a whole lot, and they're totally sensory. They just want to hang out, be loved, be in their bodies, have some good strokes. You know, like that's you know, that's the essence of mindfulness. Be a dog.
Yeah, we have a cat who
Yeah,
teaches us
that,
about mindfulness all the time.
also the best mindfulness teachers. I'm like, oh, to be a cat. That was also one of the questions. I was like, to come back in a next life, cat or dog for sure. One in a home, though, not
Yeah.
one in rescue, one in a really loved home.
Yeah.
Caveats.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the other, I'm going to put a twist on that thing
Yeah.
because I don't, like you mentioned past lives a few times because of the people you've trained with and what you've become aware of and how you've integrated those things to some degree or another into your outlook, I guess, on how we are all connected, kind of thing. Um, and partly this is supported by the stuff that Lasta is going through right now with her consciousness studies and the Paul Levy book.
Mhm. Yeah.
Our buddy Paul,
Yeah, our buddy
basically
Paul.
quantum revelation. It's sort of like the part of that is amazing because it supports other stuff I study and understand is the idea of there's no time, there's just now, and then so linear time is a construct that helps us process experience. So of course we shortcut that in terms of like, well, if I believe in other lives, I've had past lives and I'm here in this one and then I'll have future lives. But really they're not. They're all one. They're all happening at once. So they're actually all available for both tapping into experiences that each incarnation has had within their incarnation and their, which we'll say our, because really we're all in it together. Like the soul has many incarnations, so we're available to flow back and forth information and experience and exploring potential, um, and overcoming things like you're saying about the water thing. I have a bit of a water, not totally phobic, but I don't like it generally. I'm not thrilled about being in water that much. So I probably have some kind of similar um, explanation as to why that is, because some part of me, the greater I am, is still processing or is not happy about that idea being brought into consciousness, conscious awareness. Um, but we also, we can go back and forth in our own lives and kind of, um, like when you're saying being super present in the environment and being part of nature. If you're able to like, if you know that you're deeply feeling just one, then you can kind of share that out with your your younger self as you are now and your other selves, your other incarnations, and just send out the love and the kind of it's all good in terms of we're safe, I'm safe, we're safe. And I think it's kind of worth, like, it is worth sharing in that way, because the energy does go somewhere and is received and is then shared out again, I think. um, and I know we can do in a lot more immediate ways with things like just being in nature. Like my one of part of my preferred experience during the day is just taking my shoes and socks off and standing, or having my feet in the ground and grounding, right, and just earthing. So that's a version of that, and but there's like you can go way deeper, obviously, and be like in water if you love that, or in the woods, um, or just float away and do it in your mind if you want. But um, I just, anyway, I know I'm nitpicking in terms of the past lives thing, but I just think it's
Honestly, like I would say in terms of I only brought it up because Lesia and I wanted to acknowledge it. And as part of my life now, how much I think about it is like less than 1% in terms of, I feel
mm-hmm.
like I was there at one point in my life and I thought it was interesting and I incorporated it and I just sort of like slotted it into a place and really like it's not part of what I think about anymore, but just part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I would love to say like what you just said about nature is like she is a lovely container, right? She
Mhm.
is a lovely, container for all of us, and she takes care of us. And I do think, and what has been challenging during this time is, in Toronto and a lot of big cities, people have not had a backyard, and people live in high rises, and people do not have skills to go inside themselves and um, visualize, or because they haven't, nobody's holding their hand along the way to say you can go here and this place is safe, because it's been a lot of fear.
Mhm.
So it is
Yeah.
a tough year, right? So I think just part of like why I love, again, the stuff that I've done is it like, even with people who have done yoga and meditation before in the classes that I've been teaching, they're like, oh, I've never been taught this way before. Like, thank you. And it's like you can even listen to a podcast, or listen to like a visualization, but sometimes to have it wrapped up in hearing about people's experiences, sharing dialogue is very therapeutic and very processing, like we're doing now, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think if you sit down and you listen to a visualization by yourself for 10 minutes, yeah, it's going to do something, but actually like going through a process and then sharing with other people, that's when the learning happens. That's what I noticed for myself during my
Yeah.
training, is that the interaction and the dynamic between the water cooler talk that people have been missing all, for the, last year and a half during COVID. That's when creativity flows, and all of this beautiful magic starts to happen between people, because we need each other,
Yeah. Oh, you're frozen again.
right?
Um,
And so I think, you said brown, and I believe because they were like, stay indoors, don't go anywhere, don't leave your house, and it's people are suffering now because of it.
it well that's this is one of my challenges right now is in I believe in forgiveness in terms of like let just acknowledging this is what's happening, just it's part of me, right? But even the description of what's been happening as like we're all part of the consciousness that brought it about. I accept that totally. I don't like the story that it's we're all uh, enduring or going through COVID. It's not really COVID. To me, the story would be the COVID response, the response that governments that set the parameters and like the rules around what may be done and what may not be done and when. That's an opportunistic. That's something that was immediately jumped on by I think certain mindsets of government bureaucrat type people to basically do some power games or whatever because
Oh,
as the data comes in it's like the masks and the distancing and lockdowns especially it's like it's not appropriate.
badly this whole thing was handled over the years. And yet we've all still suffered in our own ways. And I think from even province to province and country to country, we've all experienced this differently. And I feel like Ontario, we were hit like so hard because we've been in lockdown. We're in lockdown for a very long time. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when you look at it 5 years from now if that will be a good thing or a bad thing. I think again, emotionally and mental health, it has not been great for us. And yes, I understand what you mean from a top end perspective, and I'm always thinking about it like, what is the word on the street? Because this is what I like. I this whole time I've been practicing, and I've been able to touch people. Like, since basically 2 months in, people have been in their homes, but I've been touching people the whole time,
Mhm.
and I can feel trauma in bodies. People that I've been treating for years and I haven't seen in 2 months because they haven't been able to come in, and I'll be like, what happened to you? Like, you okay? They're like, no, I'm not okay. So I feel like I've had the privilege of like word on the street, like even deeper than therapy in some ways, because therapy, even talk therapy, has gone on Zoom. And that, like, there's something about being in someone else's space that also magic happens. And so I've had again, there's this really wonderful perspective that I tangibly feel the crap in people's bodies that has been building over this time. So I think when I say yes, government, we could talk about that, and how it was all handled, and how I'm sure, again, like all the debauchery that's gone on
Well,
behind the scenes. But I
yeah,
think how it's affected us on the, you know, day-to-day world.
yeah. I'm not going to go down the political road, but I even that word govern, like the idea of for many people, it is uncomfortable to even have the idea of governing oneself. Like to who governs me? Who oversees what I what my choices are, I guess, right? Because if you take all of this experience out of it, if you go back 3 years even, and if you're getting a sense of a person who they are, a lot of people, they don't know what to do or what they want. And that
Yeah.
is then how this kind of thing manifests, is like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I want. Oh well, something else will come along that will test out those statements or those beliefs, right?
An example of this was that, like, we sit down every Sunday as my family. We have like a family statement, like these are our values, and we sit down and we repeat it, and we say what supported these values. Like, what did we do this week
Mm.
to help others, and what did we do to, like, support our friends and our family. And during the last lockdown, like, I thought my son was going to have a little mental breakdown, because he's like, Mr. Like, I need to be in your space. Like, I need attention. But I love the camaraderie. I love the back and forth. So he came back from whatever, a month in school, and he like bounded in the door, and he's like, hi, mamacita. He was like this. And I was like, oh my God, my son is back. Like, I had not seen him this.
Wow.
Like, he was basically like an 80-year-old man on the couch, like drinking, honestly, 80-year-old man on the couch, drinking tea, couch on his, a cat on his lap, and a big, blanket. And I was like, you're 80. And so I saw him, and he's like, guess what? He goes, it's sinking in. He goes, all the stuff I've learned the last couple of months, it clicked this week. And I was like, what? Good. So amazing. Because he needed to do this with the teacher and talk to him, and not be one small little thing on a screen. And then, like a month later, they, didn't go back again. So, I mean, what he learned, I do not know. And more, my point with all of this was this idea of values, is that I was running with him since lockdown. We were like this, we were just going to run this whole time together. But every time they had a new announcement, we had to like call each other and almost like sign a new contract. So they were like, don't go out with anyone other than your family. And I'd be like, how do we feel about this? Like, I'm in healthcare. She works for public health in like tracing COVID. We're pretty responsible people, but yet, and we like to think we're rule followers. So even with these two parts of ourselves, we felt like, oh my God. And she's like, what is your biggest fear? And I'm like, I don't want somebody to yell at me, telling me I'm doing something wrong and I'm hurt $100 ticket. Like, that doesn't bother me. It was more about, I don't want other people to think that I'm doing something wrong and like start yelling at me. So I don't want to be confronted negatively, was my biggest fear. And
Hmm.
anyway, so but then I had to sit down, and like with all the people that were in my circles, we had to sign a new contract to say, as long as we're doing this safely, I'm still okay to meet with you, despite what the governance and what they're telling us to do. And I said that to my kids. I was like, I know this is hard. I know what they're telling you to do. And if you come home with an $800 ticket, I will support you and I'll pay for it. So like, like, I mean, the governance is top down telling you, and, you know, setting the rules, but yet we had to sit down with our own family values and say, I'm not okay with this part because we're all kind of falling apart a little bit. So yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
I think that's amazing. I love that you just brought all of that up and brought it down to values. Because just from my experience and my experience as, friend and wife and roommate to Glenn and then Milana, our daughter, the last year and a half, it just like it was all over the map. And for me, what sort of started as, I'm in consciousness studies. I am bigger than anything than what's going on here. So that, like, for the first month or so, I was like, I got this, I got this, I got this. But then as the rules kept changing, as policies turned into mandates, as where I worked became an unworkable environment because it was in retail, so there were people coming through the door constantly. The gamut of opinions and criticisms and judgments, and it's a big hoax, to we're all going to die, to people coming in hazmat suits, and others it's like I'm immune, to having employers who at the beginning were like, it doesn't matter, we all know each other anyway, so like we're all safe, to now being like on the other side of the spectrum. It just, it became so hard, and it really, I felt myself get sucked into it. And after a couple of months, it was just like, you know what, I cannot be here. It's I feel like I am physically and mentally and emotionally unraveling because I don't know how to wake up in the morning and go and do my job, which is no longer the same job that I signed up for 2 years ago when I started working at this place, because it's more about managing people's emotions and fears and anxiety and being a bouncer at the door because we can only have so many people in at a time. And then there's, the people that I was working with, and everybody being, at their own level, their own comfort level or whatever. But then also coming home and having conversations, heated conversations sometimes with Glenn, and then having a kid who was, home away from school after having been home away from school because of a teacher strike that lasted 6 weeks or whatever it was. And then COVID, shut down the school. It really, 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 over the course of the year, and lots of mindfulness, so much meditation, extra prayer partners, and like just extra, 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 extra after I left my job, and chiropractic appointments galore, which ended up, getting me a job, working at the clinic, which I believe has been one of the things that has saved me and my family through the, this entire thing, like especially over the last few months, because there has been this opportunity to care for the body, for the soul, to release the interference that, is getting in the way with the immune system actually working, and and changing from, or just I don't know what, but it's changed, like the way that I think about COVID, and or the COVID response, the COVID experience has changed over this last year, from what it was to what it felt like, what was the impetus for me to leave, and what do I want to put my energy on. It's not this, to how I dealt with it, to kind of like put myself back together again from feeling completely torn apart, from, yes, there are these rules, and I, like, sort of like you just said, like I consider myself as someone who follows the rules, and I'm okay with following the rules, but then getting to the point where this isn't making sense, sort of on just a moral or ethical level, and I, as someone who has chosen not to get the vaccine because I don't think I need it, um am now starting to feel like I'm in a minority, which may or may not be the case, because statistics haven't, and the facts haven't, it's unclear as to what the facts are these days, because it's getting harder and harder and harder to find an opposing view that is, staying up on any kind of social media platform of like the big regular ones. But to feel like, who's in charge of me? Who's in charge of my body? Who's in charge of my life? Who's in charge of my life experience? And ultimately, when it boils down to it, even though I live in a family, in a community, in a city, in a society, blah, 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 ultimately, when it boils down to it, it's me. And I don't like being told that, if I don't get a vaccine, then I'm doing something wrong, in terms of I'm being irresponsible. I'm thinking for those people who have gotten their vaccines, great. Clearly, you got it because you think it's going to protect you. So you're protected. I don't have to get mine in order for yours to work. And people who have gotten them can be just as much carriers as people who have not gotten them. And ultimately, I choose to believe that my immune system is strong, that I am supported, and that if I did get it, which frankly I think I did before it became, public enemy number one, that it would be like, I would go through it. I would go through it. My immune system would do its work, and maybe it would suck. Maybe it'd be hard. Maybe it'd last a couple of days. Who knows? But I would rather take that risk and have that experience than go the other route. And to be made, to sort of, I mean, ultimately I choose the way I feel, but to, not be told like I can't travel, I can't fly on an airline. I may end up being, held hostage, imprisoned on this island that I've chosen to live on because I didn't get a couple of shots. What? So that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's a very interesting place to be, especially because of the studies that I'm immersed in. And knowing that most of the people I know in the spiritual communities that I am immersed in have chosen to go the vaccination route. And there is this notion of, it's here anyway. I think July 1st, the masks become recommended rather than mandatory. And there are lots of people I know, which is like, as soon as it changes to recommended, psh, off they come. Whereas
Yeah.
others are just like, oh, I don't know. Like, are you sure? Could, like they're even wearing doubles or whatever. Anyway, this is going a little bit down the rabbit hole. But ultimately it's like, who's in charge of me? What,
Mhm.
where am I creating life from? And I really want to continue to focus on creating life from and as that infinite expansive universe, for my best and highest, for the most extraordinary life experience that is mine to have, and to take from experiences like the COVID response and the unfoldment. And it's like, okay, what is mine to learn here? What is mine to embrace? And what is mine to say, thank you, I'm choosing to focus on this instead.
Yeah. And I completely uh hear you. And I feel like I think we all deserve, sorry, it says unstable. We all deserve our own right to make that decision for ourselves. I totally believe that. We were just at we were getting our vaccines at Nathan Phillips Square and had a lot of people who were protesters. And it was very difficult because despite what you think, as I've, been up and down in terms of vaccinations through even the life of my children,
Mm-hmm.
and for tell me that I shouldn't be doing certain things with my children and calling me certain things was also very challenging, because I'm like, if you have your path, it's your path.
Yeah.
Your path is not my path or my path. And so can we all just decide what feels best for us on this path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at the beginning, I was always like, I don't want things going in my body that I don't know what they are, and I want them to be studied really well. And in the end, I had to find peace for myself within it as well, because it's not sort of my favorite place to go. But it took a lot of inner guidance to
Yeah.
ask myself, what am I afraid of? And I read a lot of stuff and did a lot of meditation work with it to figure out my peace around it as well. But it took, but to also know that I have the skills, and to invite people to have those skills to actually have that exercise and actually ask yourself and do the inner work to figure out where that sits with you and what are the implications. For me, it felt really important as a healthcare provider and in the role that I have to have it for me personally. But it's like, again, it's a choice. It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that everyone is allowed that choice, and that's sort of
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
yeah.
I agree. Honey Bunch, you muted yourself.
Big one.
I was rustling papers. Sorry, I just didn't
Oh,
want to. Didn't want to get too loud there.
Shuffling cards. Yeah, okay. Did you want to say anything, Glenn?
No, no, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that you do as work and as part of your life experience and the way you are of support to people in the world is being a doula. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what being a doula is like for you.
Well, I mean, again, COVID's changed it a little bit, and I'm not doing it as much. I used to do like a birth a month, and now since I'm not able to be at hospital births, so I'm at birth center births and home births currently. Um, it is honestly one of my biggest life joys, and I I feel like every time I'm at a birth, I've I'm trying to even put it into words. Like it's the biggest way that I connect into the universe. Like to me, when you are at the most raw, authentic, genuine moment in people's lives where there's no facade. There's no
Yeah.
facade, and people like I'm at like I'm the person at the party that if I can't have like how are you feeling conversation, I don't want to be there. Like I really just need to get to the heart of everything rather than I don't want to talk about the weather or what's happening with J-Lo. Like I really just need to know
Yeah.
like what are you all about? Tell me all about yourself.
Yeah.
And so that is birth to me. And then I get to be almost like this Sherpa, like of sorts, maybe not carrying bags, but like to a family to help usher them into this new unit that they've created. This new family has just come together, and how can I be the best servant of sorts to servant in a supportive way to usher them in this like authentic
Oh, I almost caught the beginning.
needing as a
Okay,
gift.
yep.
And I feel like my language is different. Like I there was this one birth that I was at, and I was saying to her, can you just could you because she said to me after, she was like, I remember you whispering my ear, can you just be a body? Because when fear comes from she's like I can't, and I'm like, just be a body. I was like, what do you think? And I could hear her stop, and she wasn't saying anything, and then she's on because I'm just a body, just a body. And then she said after, she goes, that was so helpful. She goes, I was just being a body. I'm not thinking about it. It's not thinking because your fear comes from, oh my God, I got to push a baby out. Right? It's the going 2 steps ahead. And I'm like, be a body. You're here right now. You're here with us. You're safe. Everything's okay. Like just going through all of the, like you're here. Everything's going exactly as planned. Everyone's here. Your husband's here. I'm here. Midwife's here. You're in water. Your body pushing the baby out. Oh, it's like so good. So all of those, just like I don't think I used it as much, or I'm more cognizant of how I use it in, which is really grounding and lovely. And I feel like I also, there was a birth that I was at. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know how helpful I was in that situation. And then after, the mom will be like, oh my God, that was everything. And I was like, what? And I remember all I did was basically held her head. Like I held her head and I was doing some cranial on her, and I was like holding her head. She goes, you holding my head was like the best thing ever. And I was like, I barely said anything. And it's just, and it's presence.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like that idea of people want presence, PERE and yes, they want your presence. Like children, they want your presence.
Yeah.
Mamas just want your presence.
Well, we had a doula for
and when you have that ground. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, because you froze a bit, and so okay. So anyway, okay, I'll go. We had a village for Milana, and we loved everyone in it, and so we did have a doula who worked with us for months, supported us for months before the birth, and then for a little bit afterwards. And she was also a chiropractor. She was my first introduction to chiropractic, and
Okay.
then there was you, and so she did network, so there was no bone cracking or crunching or anything like that. And I remember when I was pregnant, and she's just lay down on the table, and I'm like, and she just did these flicks, and I'm like, what the hell? And then I got up, and I'm like, whoa. What just happened? It's very different from the best work that the chiropractor that I work for now, the bioenergetic synchronization technique, is, where there is more talking, and there is, thinking of recurring thoughts, and chief complaints, and bit of not dialogue necessarily, but there is speaking involved. But having her as a doula, and having this village where everyone had a job, not only was it amazing for me to just be fully supported like that, but it also meant that Glenn could just be the expecting father. That's it. That was his only role, too, was just to be the dad to the mom that was, working with this baby that was making its way out. And to have, we ended up having three midwives, because there was a student, the backup, and the main, and the doula, and our naturopath, and my mom was there. And it was just such an extraordinary experience. And every now and then, it's usually when we move and I'm packing and unpacking boxes, I come across the drawing that I did. I think it was the first time that we met with Marissa Honeybunch. I don't know if you remember, but we sat in our living room, and she asked us to draw how we felt about, just like in the moment. And for me, I drew this like with crayons, this like super cute bulbous round, body with a little head. It was like a stick figure almost, but my hair was long, and it was like tied up on top, and it was purple and pink at the time. And just this little universe with a baby inside the circle, and there were stars, and it was just like so happy and amazing and joyful. And every time I come across this sheet, this picture, it just makes me so happy, because it just, I loved that experience. I mean, all of the, like, man, was it hard, and especially for me once my water broke. Like, it had been hard until then, and then the water broke, and that was just 7 minutes more, and then Milana was born, and I'm like, oh my god, I thought before was hard. But with the one tip I sort of do, or sort of like, aside from at the end when she's saying you have to push now, and me thinking I can't, and she's like, you have to push now. And it's just like that, like it just like everything goes into high gear and happens. But was that I was only dilated by 2 centimeters for so many hours, and the contractions were very, very strong, but nothing was happening. And I was just like, constantly or screaming every, 3 minutes or whatever it was. And then she just said finally at night, it's like, you have to sleep in between your contractions. And I'm like, are you insane? That's like a couple of minutes or something. She's like, you have to sleep so everyone else can sleep. and and it was like, what? But it was whatever, just sort of like, you're just be a body, whatever she said, however she did it. It was just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then I couldn't believe it, but I would sleep in between, in these like 3 or 4 minute like waves, just crash, and then be woken up, again, with Glenn like sawing logs beside me, and like, on my own, so that Marissa could sleep on the couch downstairs, my mom could sleep in the other room, Glenn could sleep, because up until then everybody was wide awake, because I was screaming so much. But that power, like, and sort of like the directive, and going from like, I can't possibly do that, to like finding it in you, because someone else believes in you, and is there to support you. Man, like,
It's an
just so
interesting
amazing.
role in the sense that you have to have these two. You have to have a soft and you need a hard, right? And you need that soft place. to like create that, you know, the fluidness. And then when it's go time or there's something that needs to shift, you're like, okay, listen to me. Like there has to be that directive. I always just say to partners too, I like sort of train them that if your partner looks like you're having a panic attack, we're like, okay, eye contact, shoulders ground, directive talk, like, you know, really, because, you know, laboring women are very suggestive and they'll listen, but
Yeah.
you really need to be like, okay, now serious, this is like a disruptor, we're changing the pace here a bit, and this has to happen, got it. For moments where you need it. Yeah, but it's also like, I was just, when you were talking there, I was just, those are those are the moments of training. Like I was just, you know, just talking about, you know, a yes meditation, the last class I was teaching, and there's a midwife in the group, and I was just saying, I also sometimes think about birth because I remember, like, I remember when I was in labor, and I remember kept on going, no, I don't really want to do this right now. You know, like, you know, when you feel sick and you're like, no, I don't want to work. I'm going to lie in bed and I'm going to curl up and I'm going to watch TV. Like, labor is like, you don't have that option.
Yeah.
Like, don't really want to do this right now, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then so you have this other part, you have this no, 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 like this little devil voice, and then you have like a yes, right? And if you don't train the yes enough, like the no gets really big. So it's this idea of just like, I'm like I remember, like I remember having the conversation in my head where it was like, I don't really want to do this right now. And then I was like, the other part of me was like, Adrienne, pull up your big girl panties. There's nobody else to do this right now. You gotta do this. And I'm just like, God damn, I gotta do this. And I remember like having this like fight with myself inside my head. So I think about that with women, that you're like, you have to keep nourishing that yes. Like, yes, it's okay. Yes, you're okay. Like everything's okay. Acknowledge the fear and then put it in a bucket and like go, okay, we got to put that aside, like process it, get it out quickly, and then we're going to move on to like the next stage, which is getting your baby out. Because sometimes they'll have a, you know, I usually say at like 8 centimeters there's transition, and they have this cathartic meltdown where you're like, I can't do this, and I'm like, this is part of the process.
Yeah.
Every laboring woman who's ever done this naturally has said, either internally or externally, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we must be getting close then. I think anytime, I always just say that anytime we've ever done anything hard, we've probably had the thought, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the thing that comes to mind for me when I was in the final hours with in labor with Milana was, I didn't want to embarrass myself or sort of like embarrass our household by being so incredibly loud, by like making the sounds that I really wanted to make. But in those last 7 minutes, when I was on the toilet and my water broke and it was just like, oh, I was about to swear, stuff just got real. It would like, I mean, it's so long ago now. I can't, you know, I actually am not able to conjure up, you know, that pain. But it was the most intense ever, because it went from like, you know, I don't, on a scale of like, it was already, you know, super hard. So maybe like, you know, 80 or something to 1,000 on a scale of 100. And then like stuff just happened super quickly. But I remember being in our upstairs bathroom, there's a window right there, and just like screaming what to me felt like these blood curdling cries of almost like I'm dying and being torn apart, but knowing this is what's happening and thinking, what are the neighbors thinking? And then later when Glenn, you know, like just seeing him take Milana in the sling and out into, you know, the street and all these, and I was told you can't go downstairs for 3 days, seeing the neighbors from all their houses come to like view this tiny little peanut that had just come into the world was just, it was so neat. And eventually I found out from one of our neighbors, and I'm like, was I really loud? Like, did I keep you guys awake? And she's like, no, it just sounded like someone having really good sex. Well, that's not what it felt like to me, but okay.
Yeah, I know. What is it saying? Like, the same way you get the baby out is how you got them in. So all of the sort of things that we're trying to, it's like nipple stimulation and making out, like all of those same things. Like sometimes when you're trying to get the oxytocin flowing,
Yeah.
you're like, all the things that got the baby in, get the baby out. Yeah,
God.
yeah. It's quite a ride. It's a
Hmm.
ride, and what a like a glorious ride that we get to, experience as women. Yeah.
Yep.
I remember my I remember my husband after our second, he was like, I could hear him talking, and they're like, "How did it go?" And he was like, "Oh, it was great, piece of cake." And I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Because it was like, like distinct and smooth. So in his head, it was like a piece of cake, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Not in this body, it wasn't a piece of cake. I just made it look really easy. Oh,
Oh, and
oh,
that just
brother.
reminded me, a couple of days after Milana was born, we had our registered massage therapist come over and give everyone massages. Glenn, my mom, me, and
Oh,
do craniosacral on Milana. And and this picture I really want to find, because there is this beautiful black and white photo that was taken with an actual camera on with film, back in the day, of Diana holding Milana, and just like, I mean, her hands are barely apart because Milana was so tiny, and Milana's in this tiny little robe, not even a onesie, because she was so small. Like onesies, she was swimming in them, but these little like Hugh Hefner robes or whatever were like the cutest little thing. And she's just so alert. It's like, but there's window, like sunlight streaming in through the window, and Diana's hair is cascading down, and Milana's just so tiny, and she just like, I can that I can feel, even though I wasn't the one doing it. I can just feel like her manipulating all these tiny little bones and cartilage, and energy, flow and everything. And Milana just staring, the both of them just like so connected. It was just, oh, I'm so grateful that that moment was captured on film, because it's just extraordinary.
biggest joys that I've had are either to clients who understand the importance of chiropractic in bodies, but also trusted me enough when babies were born to say, can you look at them? Or, I can already see things when they're born, and I'll be like, can I do something? I feel like I can help. Like babies, I can see are born with, a neck
Yeah.
extended, and having a really tough time, regulating at
Mm.
the beginning. And again, midwives that I've known for years, a beautiful moment that, like, honestly, some of my biggest like moments in life, where I remember that one midwife is also cranio, and I'm like, I got the tail, you got the head, and we were just like working on them, and you could see this baby that was having a hard time sort of breathing, and would just be like, oh, like come back into themselves, because it is
Yeah.
hard, right? um yeah, yeah, those are some of my most meaningful moments being at birth, is getting to treat them on the other side and have them, enter this world in this sort of relaxed state, because it can be a hard process.
Yeah.
Yeah, big joys, big joys.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, honey bunch, are you about to say something? Because I just looked at the time and I'm
No,
like,
I know.
oh my God, we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
2 hours.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me, but it's just like, wow, there's so much more that we could talk
Yeah, yeah.
about. Anyway, okay. Well, honey bunch, if you don't have anything to add, then I say we move into our next segment, which is the super rapid fire question round,
Got it.
where you're going to have a minute. Glenn is going to bombard you with questions, and you just answer quickly, rapidly, off the top of your head. No deep thought,
Okay.
please. Because otherwise you'll only answer like 4 questions. And we want,
And and in terms of the first question, you're either going to get it totally or you're not going to get it. So just let it go if you don't get it.
Come on.
yeah, just say pass. Some people like,
Yeah.
It's like, But anyway, okay. And then after that, Glenn will tell you what you've won. All right. Okay. Yeah. For those
Okay.
of you who are listening, the face that Adrienne just made,
Yeah.
disdain. Okay. So, Honey Bunch, are you ready? On your mark, get set, and go.
Okay, Adrian, what is the best surname for a fake ID? McRuvie or McLovin?
McRuvie.
Okay. Do you prefer swimming in pools or the lake?
Oh, pools.
Okay. Teaching or learning?
Oh, sorry. Teaching.
Naps or massages?
Massages.
Soup or salad?
Salad.
Okay. Alkaline water or kombucha?
Kombucha.
Reincarnation or YOLO? You only live once.
Reincarnation.
Family night or date night?
A family night.
The Four Noble Truths or the Four Agreements?
Oh, it's hard one for. I'm gonna go for agreements.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay. Card games or chess?
Chess.
Ding, 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 ding. All
Okay.
right.
That was easy. That was easy. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Adrienne. Thank you,
Oh, you're
Glenn. Tell her what she's won.
From, you get three little things from the uh,
Say it.
welcome.
Pam Grote book.
Yeah.
The Course in Miracles experiment, starter kit for rewriting your mind, and it's basically one thing a day for a year. Which I'm not really a Course in Miracles person, but I really appreciate how she's put these little quotes to head her chapters. So, the first one, since we're talking about children, is by Keith Johnstone. I began to think of children not as immature adults, but of adults as atrophied children. Let that sink in for a second. Um, the next one, Alan Watts. Reality is only a Rorschach ink blot. Like that. And finally, by another Adrienne Rich. Until we know the assumptions in which we are drenched, we cannot know ourselves. What do you think? What do you assume is going on in life?
Good.
Examine that. Okay, thank you.
All right. Congratulations on those three nuggets.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So,
Mhm.
after all of this stuff that we've talked about today, if there is anyone who would like to get in touch with you, to know more about you, to find out more about you, where could they go?
I would say Oma Chiropractic. So that's www.omachiro.com as the main website, because that's, I would say, where I spend most of my time. And the other website I have is Dr. Adrienne. So it's ADRIENNE McRuvie, MCRUVIE.com, which is needs a little bit of updates, but you can definitely contact me through there.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. We're going to have a block, like a visual slide, so that people who are watching can also see that. Oh, Adrienne, thank you so much for today. It has been such an absolute joy, such a delight, and just so super cool to hang out with you again.
I agree. It's been too long, and thank you. I'm honored for you even thinking about me for this chat. It's nice to connect with you, Glenn, as well.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. And thank you to everyone who tuned in for another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia. I have been your host. I have been here with Glenn. Our super special, amazing guest today has been Dr. Adrienne McRuvie, doula, chiropractor, yogi, and just like super amazing, amazing being who is all about connectivity and interconnectivity with everyone and everything on so many different levels. I am so grateful. We are so grateful for your support, for your engagement engagement. Let us know what you think by liking, by subscribing, by leaving a comment wherever it is that you're listening or watching. And we are so excited and delighted knowing that in just a couple of weeks, there will be a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? And we look forward to seeing you then. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lassia Kohut, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Adrienne McRuvie. Music, Vasco Lorenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Sterke, copyright 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lassia Kohut Soul Excavator, please visit www.lassiakohut.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?